Hey, geographers, do not play with fire. I was just curious to see how it would show up on camera. All right, this is our introduction to agriculture for our agriculture unit. I'm recording from Denville, New Jersey, while we're getting lots of snow. I just finished my presentation for the George Washington Symposium. I came home, took off nerdy history clothes to more normal people clothes, and now we are learning about agriculture. So let's do this. Um, We are learning about processes. So agricultural processes, they're impacted by the physical environment, right? Not rocket science. Like, oh, it's going to be different to try to grow an apple tree in a desert or in Antarctica as opposed to your backyard in New Jersey, right? Plants have requirements. You can remember them, or you can remember tiny lake swan. So TLSW little a and S. So the T is for temperature, right? The L is for light. The S is for space. The W is for water. The N is for nutrients. So plants need all these things. Now, because of this, I need to put this down. Different areas will grow different crops, right? Because they have different needs, different requirements. So I'm going to do like a table chart here, but do like one at a time. So you would make 3 columns, as you see here, 1, 2, 3, 6 rows if you're doing this from the start. Now, you see a picture of cows, and you're like, how is cows agriculture? Cows are not plants. If you're a vegetarian, you don't eat cows, right? Um, why is this? In the unit, agriculture unit should probably be called the food unit, right? That's the real thing, I think. But just like humans need food, so do livestock. So you're not going to be raising cows unless you're feeding them whatever different people claim to feed them. All right, so first, let's talk about cold mid latitude environments. Examples would be the northern United States, southern Canada, and eastern Europe. Some of the things that you can grow or raise there would be wheat, barley, livestock, and dairy cows. Now, in this introduction, I'm going to show you some of the ways this is relevant in the news today. I thought I had an example there. We'll have to come back to it. Mediterranean. Maybe I deleted it on accident, but it was about raising those things. All right, the Mediterranean. Examples would be California, Chile, the Mediterranean Sea area. So not the Mediterranean location, but the Mediterranean climate we're talking about. They can grow things like grapes. Now you can still grow grapes, in upstate New York, but the growing season is not going to be the same, right? The ease to do it is not going to be the same. Olives, ugh, dates. This is an olive farm in California, and you see that news article, and you see this graph here. For a long time, California was mostly canning olives, but now they're starting to crush them to make what? Olive oil. All right, let's talk about the grasslands. That could be Northern Africa, parts of the Western United States, Mongolia. So here, where there's lots of grasses, this is prime area for cattle ranching. Oh, I was going to wear my hat for this video, but that's a lot of effort right now. Goats, horses, sheep, camels, things like that. Here's a recent story from this past month. Strong demand, high cattle prices to continue for ranchers. Right? If they can expect a strong demand, even though prices are high, right? They want the demand to be high. It says here at the bottom, the combination of reduced supply and steady demand has created a market environment where cattle prices remain elevated, giving ranchers opportunities, but meaning it might not be so cheap for you to buy that steak. Next, we have subtropical areas like in Indonesia and the West Indies. It's Indies, not Indies, right? This is where you might see things like rice and cotton and tobacco, which you should not use. This is a tobacco farm from the United States. This is a news story. I did watch the video of this farmer in North Carolina. Said climate change is really hurting their farms. and tobacco crops were not yielding well. So they said, hey, let's give a shot and try corn. And that wasn't working either. So climate, right? They were talking about geography here. It affects what you grow, but if then the weather is bad, the climate's bad, that's going to have an impact as well. So that's from this fall. Look it up if you want to watch that video. All right, next we have tropical, which could be equatorial Africa, Indonesia. Here you'll see things like coffee, sugar, and tea. Think of when you think of like the transatlantic slave trade and colonization, like that whole period of history, lots of those things. This is a coffee bean farm. And here, global coffee prices, right, is about to go up. This is just from today, people, February 15th, 2025. If you're watching it years from the future, I don't know what's happening then. But disruptive weather linked to climate change has dented coffee bean supplies, which industry experts warn could soon leave a bitter taste in consumers' mouths. So all those seniors I see coming back from lunch with their iced coffees from Dunkin' Donuts, it might not be affordable to do that. Lay off the Starbies, people. You need to save money for college, all right? We have warm mid-latitude areas. This can include southern China and the southern United States. You'll see veggies and fruits and rice here. This is a rice farmer from the United States. I don't know his name. Let's call him Bob. All right. This is a recent article from earlier this week. You learned how the United States, with the new administration, is getting rid of U.S. aid. Part of U.S. aid is sending crops such as rice to areas in need. Some of those crops come from the United States. So Louisiana farmers are like, thanks a lot. Now we're not, this is what we do. We grow rice for U.S. aid, and now we need to find new ways to make money. Keep in mind all these, I try to include where I get all these articles from. This one it didn't say, but I think it's the Arsenal, which is a left-leaning article. It's critical, but it is reported to be a high fact, high accuracy news agency as well. All right, so crops may align to their environment, but say you want to grow coffee in a grasslands environment. Can you do that? Technically, yes, because environmental possibilism. You learned about that earlier in the year. But it's not always effective when you look at the cost-benefit analysis. But let's get into that a little bit. All right, so how could humans supplement things, right? So in class last week, people were talking about supplements you might take, if you're working out, right? We were talking about creatine and glucosamine and all different, some people will take L-thiamine, whatever, right? Plants can have supplements just the same. So if we break down those letters, what supplements can each one have? Well, if the temperature is too cold, you can have greenhouses. That's a Morris County greenhouse. You might pass by that. If there's not enough light, you can produce artificial light. If there's not enough water, you can produce irrigation, right? It's expensive, but sometimes it's worth the cost-benefit analysis. Nutrients, that's a typo, fertilizer, not fertilizer. And if it needs more space, you can clear land, you can modify the land, right? So all these things can be overcome, right? If you're trying to grow a crop in a different area. We'll try to make little mini greenhouses this week. Hey, it says I'm running out of battery, but it's okay. All right, there we go. But sometimes it's not just worth it. All right, so some crops are restrained to only some areas because some climate conditions just can't be replicated on a scale to make a profit. We showed how, like, along the Nile earlier this year, there's areas where they bring out irrigation to grow crops. They're not going to spread that out 200 miles inland. It just, the costs are not worth it, right? We saw how parts of Northern Europe used vertical farming. With the tariffs in Canada, someone last week was like, oh, so they're going to put tariffs on veggies and fruits and from Canada? Like, hello, it's cold in Canada. Canada, it actually exports lots of this because they're high in agricultural technology, right? With their uses of irrigation technology, vertical farming, all those sorts of things. Don't just assume an environment is going to reflect how much a country produces, because their technology, like Canada, sometimes makes up for a lot of it. And if countries can't afford that technology, sometimes they'll only grow specialized crops, to try to make as much of a profit as possible. Then they may have to import some of their other crops that they could technically grow there, but they're just trying to make as much of a profit as possible. Here's an example of irrigation costs are significant. So this is in the United States, and if the irrigation rates go up 11%, right, whatever it's irrigating, whatever crop it's irrigating, that's going to affect you when you go to ShopRite to buy those products. So lastly, we're going to talk about intensive or extensive agriculture. And this deals with the cost to grow crops, the labor that it takes to grow the crops, and the machinery that's involved to grow the crops. So let's look at the labor and costs involved with intensive agriculture. Intensive agriculture tends to have small plots of land, but per acre, they produce a very high yield. Some examples are rice, milk, truck farming. We'll get into truck farming in the future if you don't know what that is. I know that was on the vocab list. Often you see plantation crops grown here. Think historical again, like coffee, sugar, all those crops. Mixed crops as well. Mixed crops would be like maybe you're raising cattle, but that cattle may need to eat different foods. So you're raising. I mean, they need to eat food, right? You're raising that food for it as well. It could also, you want to fatten up those cows, right? If you're going to try to sell them per pound. Market gardening. That's when think of goods you're transporting to market. So all those things with like when you go to the store and you buy grapes and lettuce and potatoes, and usually relies on a lot of migrant labor. This example here is hydroponics. This is growing with using like a water solution instead of a soil solution. Other intensive things could be, I saw some using your vocab, aqua agriculture, monoculture, which is basically like the one big crop, factory farming, the poor little piggies and the chickens, vertical farming, all those things. You may have a high initial cost in machinery, but hopefully then it will sustain it over time. This is an example of where you saw that picture of hydroponic lettuce producer in New Hampshire. Who would know that like New Hampshire pumps out a lot of lettuce? Well, with these types of technologies, you can. And they said basically in a year, their yield doubled. And you can learn more about that as well. Roughly 1 million plants at various stages are growing in an 8-acre facility, right? That's amazing. Extensive agriculture. This is low capital, but also low labor. Usually, right? There's outliers. But usually you'll also produce a low yield per acre. It usually relies on natural soil and rainfall, so not lots of supplements like we saw before. Some examples would be ranching, livestock, which is sort of related, slash and burn farming, which you see here. You learn about that in the rainforest, right? Where you slash, you burn it, you raise a crop, then it exploits the soil, and then you slash and burn another area. Shifting cultivation is very similar. It doesn't have to involve the burning, but like you grow an area until the soil is depleted, and then you start another one. Also, nomadic herding. So think of the shepherds with the animals, right? They're constantly traveling. It's usually low amounts of laborers. They don't need many things because of their lifestyle and all that sorts of stuff. Where was this photo from? I believe parts of Indonesia. And this is, I mentioned the rainforest. This is about cattle farming. Accounts for 80% of all deforested land across the Amazon, right? And 41% of all tropical deforestation worldwide. So that's why people say if you want to save the rainforest, you got to eat something other than all this meat. meat. I actually looked up, where did most McDonald's beef come from? And not that I'm encouraging you to eat McDonald's, but if you want to, it's United States and Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. So not areas that are at least involved with slash and burning the rainforest. All right, this is going to be a fun unit. We're going to grow stuff, become farmers, and all that. All right, enjoy your President's Day weekend.